Let's get something straight from the start. This world doesn't hand power to the timid. It bows to those who walk in with presence. It respects the ones who don't flinch, who don't fold, and who don't beg for approval. If you want to win, really win, you need more than just intelligence. You need psychological precision, tactical calm, relentless grit. This is not about being arrogant, it's about being unshakable. Today, I'm giving you 5 rules for total dominance. Not just to outthink your competition, but to outmaneuver, outlast, and outsmart anyone who stands in your way. Let's begin. When you walk into a room, you're not just entering a space. You're stepping into a battlefield of perceptions. Every glance, every breath, every shift in body language is a data point. The first thing people pick up on is your energy, and whether they realize it or not, they will subconsciously calibrate their behavior to match yours. That's why it's critical, absolutely critical, that you master your presence the moment you cross that threshold. You must be the thermostat, not the thermometer. You don't react to the room. You set the tone. Most people let their environment control them. If others are tense, they become tense. If others are anxious, they rush their words. If the atmosphere is hostile, they fold. That's the behavior of someone playing on someone else's field, not someone who owns the space. Power doesn't bend, it holds its shape. And that starts with self-regulation. You don't need to be the loudest person or the most animated. In fact, the most dominant person in the room is often the one who speaks the least, but watches the most. Their stillness becomes louder than noise. Their calm becomes magnetic. Control starts with your breath. It sounds simple, but it's the most overlooked weapon in high-pressure situations. If your breathing is shallow and erratic, your body will follow suit. Your voice will tremble, your thoughts will scatter, and you'll start reacting instead of responding. But if your breath is deep and measured, your mind stays sharp, your body remains grounded, and while everyone else is in a rush to be heard, you're calmly dissecting the entire room, taking mental notes, observing behaviors, and planning your next strategic move. People instinctively look to someone who appears composed under pressure. It's hardwired into us. We are drawn to stability. In crisis or uncertainty, the person who stays emotionally neutral becomes the de facto leader, not because they demand it, but because others gravitate to their balance. So when tension rises, you don't flinch. You don't match volume with volume or emotion with emotion. You let everyone else lose themselves in chaos while you remain centered. That's when the power shifts. That's when eyes start turning toward you, not with challenge, but with quiet respect. But emotional control isn't the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. You still feel the adrenaline, the nerves, the anger. You just don't let those things lead. You acknowledge them, then you put them in their place. You move with purpose. You speak when it matters. You respond instead of reacting. That's not passivity, that's precision. And in high-stakes environments, precision always beats noise. Your physicality plays a role too. Your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions. All of it contributes to the unspoken signal you're sending. Are your shoulders squared? Is your chin up? Are your hands still or fidgeting? Does your gaze settle or dart? You may think people aren't watching, but they are. They're constantly scanning for cues. And the moment they sense uncertainty in your body, they'll interpret it as weakness. But when your body language says, "I belong here," even without words, the dynamic shifts. Your voice must follow suit. Tone is everything. You don't need to shout to command a room. In fact, those who shout often do so out of insecurity, not strength. A calm, deliberate tone cuts through noise like a blade. It signals that you're not rattled, that you're in control, that you speak because you have something worth saying, not because you're desperate to be heard. And when your words are backed by steady tone and measured silence, people listen. They lean in. Mastering the temperature of the room also means reading it with precision. Who's dominating the conversation? Who's silent but observant? Who's posturing, and who's genuine? Don't just hear, listen. Don't just see, read. Every person is broadcasting signals, and the more attuned you are to them, the more you can influence the emotional current without ever having to raise your voice or force your hand. Influence begins with awareness. And remember, this isn't just about controlling others. It's about never giving your power away. The moment someone can make you flinch, rush, or doubt yourself, they've seized the upper hand. But when you operate from a place of calm awareness, when you trust yourself regardless of who's watching or judging, you become untouchable. You stop chasing approval and start directing the flow. And it's in that stillness that people start to feel your presence without you needing to announce it. This level of control doesn't come overnight. It's trained. It's forged in discomfort. It's built in the fire of situations that once rattled you but now fuel you. You start by observing yourself, your reactions, your triggers, your tells. Then you sharpen your responses. You learn to delay gratification, resist the urge to snap back, and instead, deliver precision strikes with words or silence. It's a game of inner mastery. And once you've got it, the room becomes yours before you even speak. Most people walk into a conversation with one goal: to be heard. They talk to impress, to prove, to fill silence with noise. But the ones who truly dominate any interaction know this silence is not emptiness. It's power. Because when you speak less, you give yourself the chance to hear everything. And in that stillness, you gain an edge no loud voice can ever buy. Speaking less doesn't mean staying quiet out of fear or timidity. It means restraint by design. It means understanding that every word you say reveals something. Your mindset, your strategy, your insecurities, your intent. When you speak too much, you bleed information. But when you speak only when it matters, you make every word a weapon. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is a form of power. People are always revealing themselves. They do it in tone, in pace, in choice of words, in what they emphasize and what they avoid. When you're too busy thinking of what to say next, you miss all of that. But when you're present, truly present, you hear it all. You pick up the cracks in their confidence. You catch the subtle shifts in mood. You notice the pauses, the avoidance, the desperation to be validated. That's when you start learning who they really are. In a world addicted to attention, being a listener is rare, and rare is valuable. Everyone is so busy trying to impress, trying to showcase their brilliance, that they forget the smartest person in the room is rarely the one doing all the talking. It's the one who gathers intel. It's the one who lets everyone else expose themselves while they sit back and collect data, quietly connecting the dots. Listening doesn't mean you're passive. It means you're calculating. You're watching how people operate. You're analyzing their patterns, their body language, their gaps in logic. You're listening not just to what they say, but to what they're trying not to say. That kind of awareness gives you leverage. Because once you understand a person's fears, their desires, and their blind spots, you can lead them wherever you want without ever raising your voice. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive. It's what happens when you're just waiting for your turn to speak. But listening, real listening, is active. It's strategic. It's interrogative without asking a question. It's letting someone else pour out their thoughts so you can extract the parts that matter. When you master that, people will talk to you for 5 minutes and walk away thinking you're the smartest person they've ever met. Even if you barely said a word. The more you speak, the more likely you are to say something that can be used against you. People remember what you say, even if you think it's casual or offhanded. And not everyone is listening with the intention of understanding. Some are listening with the intention of using your words as leverage. When you're selective with your speech, you minimize your vulnerability and maximize your mystique. In negotiation, in leadership, in confrontation, the one who listens longer wins, while the other party scrambles to make their point. You're reading between the lines. You're learning their priorities. You're identifying where they're overcompensating. You're sensing where they're unsure. That's the space where power hides. And that's the space you enter when you stop trying to dominate the conversation and start mastering it. People trust those who listen. It's counterintuitive but true. We trust those who give us space to speak because we associate that with respect, confidence, and patience. If you speak over people, they feel threatened. But if you listen fully, they feel safe. And in that safety, they'll open up more than they should. That's when they hand you their roadmap without even realizing it. The greatest manipulators, leaders, and tacticians throughout history all knew one thing: the more someone talks, the more they reveal. Their ego, their values, their pain points. And every one of those details is a thread you can pull. But you can't pull a thread you don't see. You can't see what someone's hiding if you're too busy talking about yourself. So you listen, not casually, but with surgical attention. Resist the urge to interrupt. Interrupting isn't just rude, it's wasteful. It breaks flow. It signals impatience. It tells the other person that you're more interested in being heard than in understanding. And once you show that hand, they start withholding. They become defensive. They stop revealing. But when you let them go on, even when it seems excessive, you create space for the truth to surface. Slowly, sometimes awkwardly, but inevitably. It takes discipline to stay quiet, especially when you feel like you've got something valuable to say. But the truth is, what you say becomes more valuable because you don't say it often. Scarcity creates demand. And when you choose your moments carefully, When you finally decide to speak, people listen. They know you're not just filling space. You're delivering a message that counts. Speaking less also gives you time to refine your thoughts. While others are reacting, you're reflecting. You're not just responding emotionally. You're assessing the landscape, finding the best angle, and then striking with clarity. That kind of precision makes people think twice before engaging you. It sets you apart from the impulsive, from the reactive, from the loud. In conflict, silence is disarming. People expect retaliation, rebuttal, resistance. When you don't give it, they're thrown off. They fill the silence themselves, sometimes with confessions, sometimes with apologies, sometimes with mistakes. You can let someone bury themselves just by giving them enough room to dig. There's also something inherently powerful about making people wait. Not out of arrogance, but out of control. When you hold your response, when you take a pause, you create tension. That tension becomes respect. People start to believe you must know something they don't. And sometimes, that belief is all you need to lead. Even in casual conversation, restraint commands attention. When you ask a question and listen with your full presence, people feel seen. They open up. They trust. And the more they trust, the more they give you, not just words, but influence. Influence you didn't demand, but earned through stillness. Being the quietest person in the room doesn't mean you're disengaged. It means you're dangerous in a different way. You're storing everything. Cataloging who's real, who's fake, who's worth your time and who's wasting it. You're not silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because you're building an advantage, moment by moment, one truth at a time. The best listeners don't just hear facts. They extract power. They take what others reveal and turn it into leverage. Not to harm, but to lead. To know where to press and when. To understand how to influence without force. Because when you understand people deeply, you can move them subtly. This isn't about manipulation, it's about awareness. Speaking less sharpens your perception. It puts you in tune with your environment. It gives you the kind of clarity that people miss when they're drowning in their own words. It trains you to be deliberate, intentional, and patient. And in a world full of noise, the one who listens rules the silence. The moment you start defending yourself, you've already accepted the premise that you are guilty of something. That you owe someone an explanation. That you need to justify your position, your value, or your presence. This is how people lose power, not in grand gestures, but in subtle concessions. Every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you're giving someone permission to question your authority. Defense is a reactive posture. It signals that you are under threat, that you are on your heels, that you're scrambling to protect what you have instead of advancing with what you know. But power doesn't scramble. Power doesn't chase approval. Power frames the situation before anyone else gets the chance. You never let someone else set the terms of the conversation. You define them. When someone attacks your ideas, your character, or your competence, they're not always looking for the truth. They're often trying to throw you off balance. And the moment you go into defense mode, you're already playing by their rules. You've entered their frame. Strategic dominance means you resist that instinct. You don't retreat, you pivot, you redirect. You maintain the upper hand by choosing when and how to engage. There's a difference between responding and defending. A response is intentional, controlled, and often surgical. Defense is reactive, emotional, and typically rushed. Most people blur the lines between the two. They react out of pride, fear, or the desire to be understood. But you don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be respected. And respect is not earned through explanations. It's earned through demonstration. One of the most important psychological shifts you can make is realizing that silence can be stronger than rebuttal. You don't need to answer every question. You don't need to clear every doubt. If you are constantly working to prove yourself, people will assume you haven't earned your place yet. But when you move forward with certainty and leave others to draw their own conclusions, they begin to sense a deeper authority in your presence. Strategic attacks don't mean aggression for the sake of it. It's not about being ruthless. It's about being deliberate. It's about understanding the timing, the context, and the terrain. You don't lash out. You don't flail. You strike when the moment is right, and you do so with precision. When someone crosses a line, you don't argue. You make a statement that silences the room, not with volume, but with impact. It's better to be feared for your silence than dismissed for your noise. When people don't know how you'll respond, they hesitate. That hesitation is power. If they know you'll always try to defend, they'll push harder, because they've found a weakness. But if they're unsure what you'll do, whether you'll strike, ignore, or escalate, you gain unpredictability, and unpredictability keeps others cautious. Think of strategy as a game of positioning. If someone corners you into an accusation, a challenge, or a trap, your job is not to explain your way out, it's to change the game. You pivot the discussion. You reframe the narrative. You shift the weight back to them. Ask a sharper question. Highlight their motive. Turn scrutiny into spotlight. When someone comes at you with a loaded question, don't answer it, expose it. Never let someone else be the narrator of your story. The person who controls the narrative controls the power. If they define you first, and you spend your time correcting them, you're giving them the mic. Instead, speak with authority from the beginning. Establish your voice, your intent, and your focus so clearly that anything else sounds like noise. When people try to spin the story, they find themselves irrelevant, not influential. Control is not about volume or dominance. It's about emotional discipline. Most people react emotionally when their ego is challenged. They get flustered, loud, or combative, and in doing so, they lose control. But when you keep your composure under attack, you project confidence. You show that no accusation, no shade, no pressure can pull you out of your seat. That's when people start questioning their own approach. Learn to use redirection as a weapon. When someone tries to make you look small, don't push back directly. Instead, highlight the insecurity behind their challenge. Make them uncomfortable in their own skin. Ask questions that turn the focus back on them. Instead of saying, "That's not true," ask, "What made you feel the need to say that?" Let your words be a mirror, not a shield. In every encounter, there's always an energy exchange. When you defend, you give your energy away. You focus on their perspective, their agenda, their expectations. But when you attack strategically, you reclaim that energy. You become the one who dictates where the conversation goes, what gets addressed, and what gets ignored. You become the axis everything turns around. Your presence alone should be enough to command space. The more you speak from a place of certainty, the less people feel they can challenge you. But the key is not arrogance, it's clarity. When you know who you are, what you stand for, and what you refuse to tolerate, people sense it. And most will back off long before the need for confrontation arises. It's not your job to convince people who are determined not to understand you. Their resistance is not your responsibility. Trying to explain yourself to the wrong audience is like pouring water into a broken glass. It won't hold. And worse, it will drain you. Save your words for the moments that matter. Save your clarity for the people who are capable of receiving it. In high-stakes situations, your goal is not to win every debate. It's to win positioning. People often mistake verbal victories for real power. They think being right is the same as being respected. It's not. Respect comes from influence. And influence comes from holding the frame, not reacting to someone else's. A strong frame means you walk in knowing what you stand for. And you never let anyone shake it. If someone disagrees, let them. If someone doubts you, let them. You don't need to chase their validation. You're not in the business of convincing. You're in the business of leading. And leaders don't beg to be followed. Being underestimated is a strategic advantage. Let them assume you won't respond. Let them think you're passive. Let them get comfortable. And then, when the time is right, disrupt their expectation. Attack with precision, not anger. With facts, not emotion. With calm, not chaos. That's when they realize you weren't silent because you were weak. You were silent because you were waiting. Don't confuse humility with submission. You can be respectful without being a pushover. You can be composed without being a doormat. And when you choose your battles carefully, people start to realize that when you do decide to engage, it's serious. It matters. And you're not just speaking, you're leading. People are drawn to confidence, but they follow certainty. And certainty is communicated not just through your words, but your choices. When you choose not to defend yourself unnecessarily, you're signaling that your time and energy are too valuable to be spent on distractions. That creates gravity. People start adjusting to your standards instead of expecting you to chase theirs. In leadership, this is crucial. If your team sees you constantly justifying your decisions, they lose faith. But when you move forward with clarity and resolve, they follow. They don't need every answer. They need to feel the strength in your direction. And you build that not by defending every move, but by owning every moment. In personal relationships too, defending yourself at every turn turns communication into a courtroom. Relationships aren't supposed to be interrogations. If someone always needs you to explain yourself, that's not curiosity, it's control. Learn to recognize the difference. And don't allow yourself to be trapped in cycles of endless justification. Strategic aggression isn't about being hostile. It's about knowing how to play offense without emotion. You don't strike because you're angry. You strike because the opportunity demands it. You don't react to every provocation. You let the provocations pile up until the timing is perfect. Then you move decisively, cleanly, without apology. Sometimes the best attack is withdrawal. Removing access, removing energy, removing yourself from the equation entirely. Let your absence be your answer. Let your silence speak the words they didn't expect. When someone loses the privilege of your attention, they feel the power shift in real time. Mastering the art of never defending is really about mastering your internal landscape. It's about trusting that you don't owe the world an explanation for your power. You don't owe your enemies a breakdown of your process. You don't owe your critics a front row seat to your growth. The less you explain, the more they speculate, and speculation is the soil where your mystique grows. Understand that power is quiet until it isn't. You don't need to bark to own the room. You don't need to retaliate to be dangerous. Sometimes, the most strategic move is to let others exhaust themselves while you conserve your strength. And when you finally act, it's not out of desperation. It's out of design. The greatest shift you can make is from the mindset of proving to the mindset of positioning. When you move with strategy, you're never surprised. You're never caught off guard. Because you're not reacting, you're studying, calculating, waiting for the exact moment where one move changes everything. And that moment never belongs to the defender. It belongs to the one who plays offense with discipline. Most people look at others and see the surface. What they wear, how they talk, how they carry themselves. They judge based on expressions, posture, and tone. But those who truly want to lead, influence, or dominate must learn to see through people, not around them. It's not about glancing past someone's words or ignoring their presence. It's about penetrating beneath the surface and uncovering who they really are, regardless of the mask they wear. Everyone presents a version of themselves to the world, a carefully managed image meant to attract approval, avoid judgment, or assert dominance. But that image is rarely authentic. It's constructed, fragile, shaped by insecurity, fear, ambition, or trauma. When you see through someone, you aren't fooled by this outer shell. You train yourself to decode their behavior, not just receive it. People don't always say what they mean. More often, they say what they think will serve them. That might be to gain your trust, avoid conflict, or manipulate the outcome. You have to listen past their words and into their intention. Listen for contradictions. Watch how their body betrays their story. Are their eyes aligned with their words? Is their posture reinforcing their claim? Real insight comes not from hearing what they say, but from spotting what doesn't add up. Seeing through people means you observe how they operate when no one's watching, or when they think no one cares. You notice how they treat those who can't benefit them. You pay attention to how they handle discomfort, how they respond to pressure, and what they do when the spotlight fades. That's where character hides. That's where truth lives. Most people live behind a series of performances. They behave differently at work, at home, in public, on social media. Each environment brings out a curated version. Your task is not to judge that performance, but to look for patterns. Where are they consistent? Where do they shift? What triggers the mask to fall? If you observe long enough, every person shows you their real self. But you have to be still enough, aware enough, and patient enough to catch it. When you interact with someone, don't just absorb their energy, read it. Every conversation is a transaction. People give off information even when they think they're guarding it. Their tone rises slightly when they're lying. Their blink rate increases under stress. Their stories shift when they're covering a weakness. Learn to read the signs most people ignore. Treat every interaction like a puzzle. Your job is to find the missing pieces. Seeing through people isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity. You don't assume the worst in others. You simply stay grounded in the reality that not everyone is as they appear. You hold space for truth while maintaining a readiness for deceit. That balance is where strength lives. It allows you to remain compassionate without being naive, to trust without being blind. In business, this skill is priceless. Deals are made not just through numbers, but through reading the human across the table. Can you sense when they're bluffing? Can you spot when they're overcompensating? Can you feel when they're desperate to close, or when they're holding something back? The better you get at seeing through people, the harder it becomes for anyone to manipulate or mislead you. You begin to notice that most conflict isn't about what it seems. The argument isn't really about the words being exchanged. It's about deeper fears, insecurities, or desires. When you can see through someone's anger to the fear underneath, you gain control of the situation. You don't react emotionally. You respond strategically. That's emotional intelligence. That's real power. Sometimes the most important thing to notice is what's missing. What someone doesn't say. What they avoid. What they deflect. People often hide their real selves by omission, not lies. Train yourself to pay attention to absence, to silence, to hesitation. The way someone changes the subject can tell you more than the subject itself. This is especially vital in leadership. As a leader, you must know the true strengths and weaknesses of your team. Not what's on paper, but what's in their character. Who steps up under pressure? Who hides when stakes are high? Who's loyal only when it benefits them? Surface level assessments will fail you when the storm hits. But when you've already seen through the people around you, you're never surprised. Developing this vision requires you to master your own perception. You must detach your ego from the interaction. You can't let your own need to be liked, feared, or respected cloud your judgment. Because the moment you start needing something from someone, you stop seeing them clearly. You filter them through your desire, and desire blinds. Train yourself to watch people like a strategist, not a spectator. Don't just watch what they do. Ask yourself why they're doing it. What do they gain? What are they hiding? What role are they playing? Who is their performance meant to convince? You or themselves? Questions like these peel back the layers faster than any direct interrogation ever could. Seeing through people isn't just about identifying threats. It's about identifying value. Some of the most powerful allies don't come in flashy packaging. They're quiet, subtle, underestimated. But if you only look around people, at what they project, you miss the ones with real substance. You miss the ones worth investing in. But when you see through everyone, you spot the gold hidden beneath the dust. This awareness allows you to move differently. You don't waste energy convincing the wrong people. You don't chase those who don't see you. You don't partner with people who say the right things but move the wrong way. You become selective, sharper, quieter. And in that selectivity, your influence grows. It also builds your resilience. When you see people for who they truly are, you stop taking things personally. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, it no longer hits as deeply because you anticipated it. You understood the playbook. You read it before it was used on you. That foresight doesn't make you bitter. It makes you prepared. In personal relationships, this clarity helps you protect your peace. You stop engaging in dynamics that drain you. You stop giving energy to people who only take. You recognize the patterns of narcissism, manipulation, guilt, tripping, and victim playing. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. You begin to build boundaries not out of fear, but out of truth. The deeper your vision, the fewer surprises you face. Most people are walking scripts. Their actions are predictable once you understand their patterns. You learn to anticipate the next move, not because you're paranoid, but because you've trained your mind to analyze, not just absorb. To assess, not just accept. Seeing through people gives you strategic advantage in every room you walk into. It lets you see the battlefield before the war begins. You know who's aligned and who's pretending. You know who's bluffing and who's ready. You don't have to guess, you've already seen it. Because while others are distracted by personality, you're focused on pattern. While others are dazzled by charm, you're anchored in truth. Most people only prepare when danger is on the doorstep. They wait for the storm before they build the shelter. But if you want to rise above the average, if you want to dominate rather than survive, you must learn to train like it's war, even when the world looks like peace. Because peace is not the absence of conflict, it is merely the space between battles. And what you do in that space determines who you are when the pressure comes. Champions aren't made in the spotlight. They're made in the shadows, in the early mornings and late nights, when no one is watching. They sharpen their minds and bodies in solitude. Not because a test is scheduled, but because they know one is always coming. If you wait until the fire is lit to learn how to hold your ground, you'll burn. But if you've been building the fire in your own chest every day, you become the one who controls the heat. Training like it's war is about mindset. It's not panic. It's not paranoia. It's preparation. It's walking into a meeting with your arguments rehearsed and your facts sharp, even if you expect it to be a formality. It's entering every room like you've already earned your space there through relentless preparation. Most people underestimate you because you look calm. Let them. Calm doesn't mean soft, it means controlled, collected, ready. This level of readiness doesn't start with action, it starts with discipline. With doing the work that no one will applaud. It's studying while others relax. Practicing while others party. Sharpening your edge when the world says it's fine to coast. Because you're not training for the world as it is. You're training for the moment when everything shifts. And when that shift comes, You'll either rise because you were ready, or fall because you weren't. The battlefield is not always physical. Sometimes it's mental, emotional, psychological. You train for war by learning how to master your reactions, how to hold your center, how to respond without panic when chaos erupts. The person who controls themselves under stress controls the situation. Most people unravel the moment tension rises. They haven't rehearsed hardship. They've only trained in ease. But you train in adversity before it even shows up. Every day is a chance to simulate the pressure you might one day face. You build your body so it won't fail under fatigue. You study so your words hold weight. You practice resilience so your spirit doesn't crack when life gets loud. You do the reps when you don't feel like it, because that's exactly when it counts. When it's not convenient. When no one's cheering. When it's just you and the standard you refuse to lower. When others relax, thinking they've won, you go back to work. Because you're not training to stay in place. You're training to evolve. To expand. To dominate in spaces you haven't even entered yet. That kind of hunger requires vision. You have to see the war before it arrives. Anticipate the shift before it breaks the ground beneath your feet. And when it does, you're not shocked. You're prepared. This mindset separates the temporary from the timeless. The people who peak and fade from the ones who rise and stay. Those who only train when it's trending fall when it gets real, but those who build habits like armor, daily, relentlessly, without excuse, become unshakable. They become immovable in a world that tries to move them every day. To train like it's war is to respect your future so much that you prepare for it now. To love your mission so much that you'll suffer for it in silence. To believe in yourself so deeply that you refuse to show up to any moment unarmed, unready, or unsure. You are the weapon. You are the defense. You are the strategy. And every peaceful day is your chance to prove it. What looks like preparation to the average mind is actually precision to the disciplined mind. Because you're not training for easy wins. You're building for hard battles. You're not here to react. You're here to lead. You're not here to survive. You're here to conquer. And the quiet before the storm, that's when warriors sharpen their edge. You are not here to take part. You are here to take command. Stop waiting for permission. Stop fearing confrontation. You have everything it takes to rise, to dominate, not with ego but with excellence. Not by force but by mastery. The world belongs to the prepared, the calm, the sharp, the unstoppable. So go, own your space, lead your life, and outsmart everyone who thought they could outplay you. This isn't a game. This is war. And you were built for it.